In my opinion, Uconnect 5, which is the new infotainment system found in the Jeep Grand Wagoneer, is the most impressive infotainment system available in a new car in North America today. This vehicle has not one, not two, not three, not four, not even 5 or 6 or 7 LCDs, including the heads-up display. There are a whopping 8 LCDs in this vehicle. We have a display for the infotainment, we have a display for the instrument cluster, we have that heads-up display, we have a passenger side infotainment display, a display for the seating and climate control for the driver and front passenger, one for the second row passengers, and then rear seat entertainment. Now, unlike some vehicles that have a ton of screen real estate, what's unique about this system is that Uconnect 5 operates all of these screens under essentially one umbrella. So all the software looks the same, and there are a lot of functions that will move from one screen to the other, or you can do the same function in multiple different screens because the way all these systems are tied together under one consistent software envelope. Let's go through these displays one at a time, starting with the heads-up display. These are notoriously difficult to film, but this is a full-color 10-inch heads-up display that gives you things like active safety information, the speed you're driving, turn-by-turn navigation directions. You can adjust basic settings within the LCD instrument cluster. And via the central infotainment LCD, you can choose between a number of different layouts depending on the kind of data that you're looking for in that heads-up display. Next up, we have the full LCD instrument cluster. It's controlled via a button module on the left side of the steering wheel. We have a 4-way sort of joystick-like control there, and then this button that brings up sort of an overview in the system. If you've used any Jeep product with a partial LCD cluster, this software should be vaguely familiar. We scroll through the options using the up and down toggle on that controller. We then have some options in the middle, so I can hold the OK button for the digital look, as you can see right there. Hold it again for the analog look. I kind of like the analog look a little bit better. And then we just one click for kilometers an hour or miles per hour. Option number 2 is vehicle information. You get some auxiliary gauges there. We also get things like the oil life, tire pressure monitoring, fuel economy information. Option number 3 is more trip information, pretty self-explanatory there. Navigation may take a little bit of time to load depending on the option that you're in, and then you can use the button toggles on the steering wheel to zoom in and out on the moving map display. This gives you the exact same map display that we find in the central infotainment system, and it's actually pretty snappy as well, other than that initial loading. The off-road screens give you the status of the 4-wheel drive system as well as the adaptive air suspension system, wheel articulation, the steering angle, etc., and some off-road numbers there. We have an audio section that will actually pull information from CarPlay if that's what's connected. We then have vehicle messages and finally settings. This is where you can adjust things like the heads-up display. So if I click OK on that one, you can adjust its brightness, its position, some limited content stuff. If I go back and then toggle over, I can enter the screen setup for this entire display. And then I can choose, for instance, what's displayed in the upper right, the upper left, the odometer, favorite menus, defaults, etc. The last layout is selected via this kind of oddly shaped button on the steering wheel, and that gives you this tableau where you can cycle through a number of different options. So I can use the controls on the steering wheel, cycle through those options right there. Infotainment doesn't really have anything to cycle through, but you can see some limited different information here, different gauges, for instance, there, that sort of stuff, and then the turn-by-turn navigation directions or the trip computer on the left side. You can also adjust the number of tiles that you'd like. So say I'd like 3 tiles there, and then I can select what those 3 tiles will be. So for instance, if I want audio info there, now we have a slightly different 3-tile look. The heart of the system, if you will, is of course the large central LCD. There are 2 different sizes in the Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer. This is the largest, and it is pretty darn large. You can see that Apple CarPlay displayed here is bigger than the vast majority of displays that you'll find in most of the full-size SUV competition. There are a lot of really interesting repeated controls in this system. So there are some touch controls for the heated seat and ventilation systems over here in the heated steering wheel, or I can click this button right up top and I can get that overlaid on this screen. And then of course, there's the screen below this that we'll cover in just a moment. The software engineers decided to maintain the bottom controls even when smartphone integration is enabled. So I can click the home button there, I can go back to CarPlay, but you'll notice that only this section of the display is used for that smartphone integration. In addition to the redundant controls, we also have readouts for the climate control system. Right now it's set to 68 degrees, exterior temperature, time, infotainment, a voice command button there. You can also do that from the steering wheel if you want to. And then these widgets up top are adjustable. So if I pull down from there, you can see I can select different things. So if I would rather have notifications up here, sorry if I actually try this right, click it and then drag it over there, I can put notifications instead of the status of the Wi-Fi hotspot. I can then close that or click the item to actually get shortcut to that particular option. The home screen in the system is configurable. I can also click My Pages and get multiple different home screens if I'd rather have some slightly different looks. These are also pop-outable, so you can pull up the entire nav display right there. You can also do the same thing for your infotainment and of course your phone interface as well. Over on media, we have that, again, same full infotainment option there, Sirius XM, Bluetooth, things like that. Over on comfort, pretty self-explanatory. You can adjust the temperature here, seat heating, ventilation, steering wheel, etc. there. Again, that is basically the same as the pop-up menu that you'll see that does not work at the moment, but if I go back over here, I can then do a pop-up for that in the comfort, right? It's right there on the screen. This is where you can also control the rear climate and the front seat massage as well. This is also where you can adjust things like the front seats, the lumbar, the back bolster, the thigh bolster, etc. Navigation is pretty self-explanatory. The system supports pinch and zoom. As you can see, it's definitely fairly snappy in response. There's Apple CarPlay again. Under vehicle options, we have a ton of different things that you can adjust in the vehicle, all sorts of different settings. Over-the-air updates are fully supported in this system. You can adjust the auto parking brake. You can adjust whether the vehicle lowers itself if you get the air suspension. There's an off-road page here. You can launch that. And then here it's going to give you basically the same displays we saw in the instrument cluster, vehicle dynamics, some accessory gauges there, pitch and roll, the select terrain, the suspension. Back on the vehicle option, there are also some additional controls, folding the second row headrest, the third row headrests, turning the passenger screen on and off right there, power side step, surround camera, and then back to the settings. Under apps, this is where you'd be able to add additional apps or just select things that you may not have located in the other areas there. There's going to be a market here. You can see that market icon if I actually go back to apps there, sorry, under the category all, there's a market, but you'll notice that there aren't as many apps yet for the system as you might think. Hopefully that will come soon, but we never really saw as many apps as I would have thought you might get with the last version of Uconnect. Below that big infotainment screen is a secondary display. This gives us basically the same sort of things that you saw above, but in a separate discrete display. So we have front climate control, seats, massage, rear climate control. You can also turn the display off. This allows you to do things like see Apple CarPlay above, or navigation, and then see the front seat controls or the seat massage controls, or you could even have them up on both if you wanted to. So you can see the front seat climate control there and up there as well. Not only does this look cool, it also means that if you open this section, which is powered, to access your smartphone or the smartphone Qi wireless charging mat, etc. back there, then you'll still be able to control your seats on the display above. And the system is smart enough to know that this lower display is off at the moment, so if I press the massage button on the front seats, it'll automatically pull up this little pop-up over here to let me control that massage functionality. Below that climate control display, we have an HDMI input for the passenger display, so let's take a look at that now. Uconnect 5 was designed from the ground up to support a passenger display. Now, rather unfortunately, I'm in an area with very limited cell coverage, but as you can see, it's doing HDMI mirroring with my smartphone right here. The system, of course, has other functions. If I go back to the home function there, you'll have to pardon the angle of the camera here. It is a little bit difficult to film this particular screen because this clear plastic cover that is over the screen can give you a little bit of glare now and then, but this is designed so that way the driver cannot see the screen. So from the driver's side, this entire panel would appear black. Over here we have a bunch of different options. I can pop out the audio option right here and actually choose some different sources. So for instance, if I wanted the USB connection, the live radio, etc., I can choose those options right there. I can choose Sirius XM. I have access to the presets right down there at the bottom. Now it is worth noting that if I have CarPlay connected to the system, then I cannot have a CarPlay display on this screen. It's also worth noting that even though I have CarPlay connected now, and I can even play some music right there via CarPlay, you'll notice that it doesn't update that particular option. I do think that is a bit of a misstep. I would love to see Apple CarPlay on the screen because Apple does support multiple different LCDs with their CarPlay technology. There's that video screen I showed you earlier, the HDMI option there. If I scroll over, I get some really interesting controls as well. I get Uconnect here, which is kind of cool. This allows me to control sources and browse media for the rear seat entertainment systems. So I can choose the input there, HDMI, USB, whatever, view screen 2. I can view the other screens here. I can also cause that rear seat entertainment system on the left side to launch Netflix or YouTube or whatever source you want, and I can do the same to the right, so that way the parent can control what's going on in the back if the kids are a little bit too young to do that. Over here we have navigation. I can also pop this out and not only get turn-by-turn navigation directions, but I can also see the map. I can enter navigation destinations right here as well. This system is not quite as snappy on this display as it seems to be in the central display, but this is actually more snappy than in the Porsche systems that have a passenger side display. If I click over here to devices, this is where you can manage headphones, you can pair additional Bluetooth devices, etc. Down here on controls, this is basically just relating to the screen. You can turn on or off, adjust the brightness, adjust the wireless headphones, and then this little bell icon that is basically just for notifications. I definitely appreciate the work that went into integrating this system in the dashboard, but I again do wish that you had the choice of Apple CarPlay in this screen and in the central screen, or just flip-flopping it so that way it could only be here and then in the central screen. It's a really nice touch, however, that the passenger can assist with the navigation, because you can see the navigation screen there, and then you can see something entirely different in the center screen, so that way if you're looking for turn-by-turn directions, your passenger can help you out there as you're doing whatever it is that you need to do over here. So navigation, maybe Waze or something like that in the middle. The central LCD for the rear seats is the easiest to explain because the functionality is the most limited. We simply get climate controls for the rear seats and then the rear seat heating and ventilation in this display. The rear seat entertainment system was developed in coordination with Amazon, so this runs basically Amazon Fire TV inside this Uconnect screen right here, and it integrates with the vehicle and with all the Amazon functions just as you'd expect. So we have Netflix, Amazon Prime, YouTube, etc. There's a library option right there where you can pull up some direct access to things popular on TV from those various different channels. Under the Jeep option, we have some things that are a bit more specific to the vehicle. The Are We There Yet option is basically the same that we've seen in the Chrysler Pacifica minivan for a while. We also have climate control controls for the rear seat passengers, similar display to what was going on in that center display, and of course the front, so we can choose, for instance, auto right over there. You can adjust the temperature on each side. These are the rear climate control zones. I can then go back right there, choose navigation, and we have basically the same navigation interface that we have up front. I can hit the search button, I can find destinations in there, and then I can send them to the front seats if needed. As you'd expect, there's an HDMI input for streaming or screen mirroring from your smart device, and then of course we have an app store, so you can add additional apps to the system. One of the interesting things here are the games. So there's tons of games that you can add to the system, like the Jackbox, Party Pack, etc. if you're familiar with the Amazon Fire universe right there. So there's tons of different things that you can add to this system, which will definitely make traveling for the kids in the back, or even adults, a little bit more interesting, because not everything in here is strictly kid-based. They've actually done a good job of curating a bunch of different things that pretty much everybody might be interested in back here. I wouldn't be surprised if these vehicles ended up being used a lot for executive transport because of the kinds of features and functions that we find here. Over here on this side, if I hit the car button, you'll see a little pop-up right there, so you can see distance to the destination, 5:05 p.m. right there, a bunch of different options through there. We then have the climate control pop up there. The configuration option is pretty much just Bluetooth apps, mirroring inputs, etc. Mirroring is a nice option here. You can mirror a phone or tablet and other screen right there. So if I click other screen, that's mirroring the screen on the other side. Now, because this is screen mirroring rather than simply sharing an input, you'll notice that the quality of this screen is just a little bit lower. But if I use the remote control on the other screen, you'll notice that we have access to just basically whatever that other screen is up to. Because all of these screens are tied to the same software and the same system, they can also be coordinated in the new Relax mode that's kind of interesting. It'll play a different series of videos and a coordinated sound here. So you can do aquarium, you can do aurora, you can have fireplace right there. So if you want to see fire crackling across your dashboard for some reason, you can do that. Again, you can see how that passenger display looks in the driver. If I go all the way over to this side, it turns black. If I go over to the right, then all of a sudden you can see it. The graphics are all coordinated with different audio, and they all kind of remind me of being in a spa.